Ashley and Ashlyn, the hot blonde best friend duo whose biggest concern after surviving a deadly roller coaster disaster is looking good for graduation photos. While their classmates are dealing with survivor's guilt and existential terror, these two are planning their next tanning session. They don't care that people died, or that they almost died. All they care about is getting that perfect glow, and death gives them exactly what they wanted: heat. Their tanning salon visit starts normal enough until a slushie starts dripping onto a power strip. The beds start overheating. The temperature climbs higher and higher. They're trapped inside as the protective goggles literally melt into their eyes. But here's why they're only number 12. Being vain and shallow isn't completely evil. They're annoying, sure, but they never actually hurt anyone. Their sin was caring more about their appearance than the tragedy around them. Though, if you thought that was bad, wait until you see what happens to people who actually hurt others. Olivia Castle. Olivia isn't your average office gossip. She is someone who laughs during a memorial service for the bridge collapse victims. But that's not even the worst part. When her coworker Candace dies in a gymnastics accident, Olivia's response is stone cold. Sucks what happened to Candace. You see the crazy shit gymnasts do. I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often. She says this right in front of Peter, Candace's grieving boyfriend. No filter, and definitely no real empathy. She goes in for LASIK surgery, thinking she's going to improve her vision. The laser malfunctions and starts burning through her eye. In her blind panic, she trips in her heels, another symbol of her vanity, and falls right through the window of the high-rise clinic. Ouch. Death destroyed the very organs she used to look down on everyone. The eyes that rolled at others' pain got burned out. She ranks higher than Ashley and Ashlyn because her vanity had victims. Those two were just self-absorbed. Olivia actively mocked the dead and dismissed others' grief. But at least Olivia's cruelty was just words. The next one was so much worse. Lewis. This high school jock genuinely believes his muscles make him invincible. When Wendy and Kevin try to warn him about Death's design, he doesn't just dismiss them. He goes to the gym and issues a direct challenge. He literally screams, "F Death," while pressing weights. He's bench pressing and roaring a challenge to the cosmic force that's hunting him. What an idiot. He's essentially slapping Death in the face and daring it to do something about it. So Death accepts his challenge. Those decorative medieval swords hanging above the weight machine? They fall and slice through the cables at the exact moment Lewis is pushing his final rep. The weights he was just controlling swing down like a pendulum and crush his head between the stacks. His strength, his identity, the very thing he thought made him untouchable. Death turned it into a head-crushing hammer. He died at the exact moment of his loudest blasphemy. Lewis ranks here because, unlike simple vanity or casual cruelty, he actively taunted Death. He didn't just ignore the warnings, he declared war on a force of nature. If you thought these deaths were bad, just remember they get so much worse later in the video, like the next victim, Carter Horton. Carter is from the original Final Destination and spends the entire movie as Alex's antagonist. He's violent, aggressive, and uses his muscle car like a weapon to intimidate the other survivors. His first act in the movie? Starting a fight with Alex on the plane that gets them all kicked off Flight 180. If he hadn't attacked Alex, they might all be dead. But that doesn't make him grateful. It makes him angrier. Throughout the film, he terrorizes the group with his car, threatens Alex constantly, and generally makes everyone's already terrible situation worse. He does have moments where you almost feel bad for him, like when he tries to die on his own terms on the train tracks, but his core personality never changes. 6 months later in Paris, everyone thinks they've beaten Death. Alex realizes the pattern isn't over. A neon sign falls toward him, and in Carter's one genuinely heroic moment, he pushes Alex out of the way. But then he asks the universe one question: who's next? The sign swings back on its cables like a pendulum and crushes him mid-sentence. Death waited 6 months to deliver the punchline to his joke. Even his one good deed couldn't erase a lifetime of aggression. Carter ranks here because, unlike the others so far, he posed actual physical danger to the other survivors. He wasn't just mean or vain or defiant, he was violent. Carter was a bully, but the next guy was an actual criminal: Isaac Palmer. Isaac from Final Destination 5 is every HR violation rolled into one slimy package. He's the office pervert who spends his days making his female coworkers uncomfortable, and his nights probably doing worse. But what really seals his fate is what he does after a coworker dies. While everyone else is grieving, Isaac sneaks to the dead man's desk and steals a gift certificate for a spa with acupuncture treatments. That's not just disrespectful, that's grave robbing the modern office edition. He uses that stolen certificate to book his appointment. Death's response? A symphony of irony. The acupuncture needles meant to heal become pins holding him in place. A fire starts, sprinklers activate, and he slips on the wet floor. He dodges burning alive only to have a Buddha statue, a symbol of peace and enlightenment, crush his skull. Isaac ranks here because he's not just morally bankrupt, he's actively criminal. Stealing from the dead while others mourn shows a special kind of evil, but the next death was so much more deserved. Hunt Wynorski. Hunt from the Final Destination is privilege personified. He's a country club brat that treats his near-death experience at the racetrack like it's spring break. While others are traumatized, he's planning pool parties. His response to cheating death? Sun, sex, and swimming. Not reflection, not gratitude, just more hedonistic nonsense. He's that guy who inherits everything and appreciates nothing. His death scene takes place at his natural habitat, the country club pool. His lucky coin falls to the bottom. This coin that he treats like it's his personality, like it's what makes him special, ends up being his downfall. He dives down to get it just as the pool's drainage system malfunctions. The suction traps him at the bottom. But death isn't done making its point. The drain's force is so powerful that it literally sucks his intestines out through his body and spits them out of the drain pipe above ground. It's one of the most grotesque deaths in the franchise, and it happens in broad daylight at a country club. Death took his symbol of privilege, that pristine pool, and turned it into a disemboweling machine. His lucky coin's luck finally ran out, and it took his guts with it. Hunt ranks here because he represents wasted opportunity. He got a second chance at life and spent it the same way he spent his first, doing absolutely nothing of value. But the next person's death was so much worse. Dennis Lapman. Dennis from Final Destination 5 is different from the others. He's not personally evil, he's systemically negligent. As the manager who organized the corporate retreat, he's the face of Presage Paper, the company that put all those employees on that collapsing bridge. He represents every corporate decision that prioritizes team-building exercises over employee safety. Every mandatory fun event that ignores real danger. His sin isn't personal malice, it's institutional indifference. His death happens in the factory. A series of mechanical failures leads to a belt sander activating and launching a massive wrench across the room at high speed. It splits his face open on impact. Dennis ranks here because he represents a different kind of evil, the banality of corporate harm. He didn't personally want anyone dead, but his negligent leadership put them all in danger. Death's message is clear. Institutional indifference to human life carries the same penalty as personal malice. But unfortunately, this death is nowhere near the most deserved on the list. Ian McKinley. Ian from Final Destination 3 has the most dramatic character arc in the franchise. He starts as the cynical goth kid spouting trivia about death, basically the horror movie know-it-all. But when his girlfriend Erin dies horribly, his detached intellectualism transforms into dangerous rage. He blames Wendy for everything. Not death, not fate. Wendy. He decides she's somehow causing the deaths and that he's untouchable. At the Tricentennial Fair during the climactic showdown, he's not just denying Death's design, he's rewriting it with Wendy as the villain. Death's response is almost comedic in its directness. Fireworks go haywire, hitting a cherry picker crane above him. The sign on the crane reads McKinley, his own name. It falls and cuts him in half vertically in a shower of sparks. Death literally dropped his name on him. After all his philosophizing about death and fate, his own name becomes the blade. It's Death's way of saying, you forgot whose story this is. Ian ranks this high because he transforms from victim to villain. He doesn't just have character flaws, he becomes an active threat to the heroes. Ian threatened the heroes, but Frankie threatens something much worse. Frankie Cheeks. Frankie from Final Destination 3 is straight up revolting. This isn't a character with nuance or complexity. He's a predator, plain and simple. He graduated 3 years ago but still shows up at high school events with his camera, filming teenage girls. Where's Chris Hansen when you need him? He cuts in line at the roller coaster specifically to sit behind Ashley and Ashlyn. After they die, he shows up at their funeral and makes it about himself, claiming they died trying to impress him. Every scene with him makes your skin crawl. When death comes for him, he's at a drive-thru. Wendy and Kevin try to warn him, but he just flips them off. An out-of-control truck causes a pileup, and an engine fan launches forward like a buzzsaw. It slices through his headrest and lodges in the back of his skull, the spinning blade still whirring in his brain. The death is specifically targeted at his perverted mind. Death doesn't just kill him, it shreds the organ he used to objectify minors. The camera he used to violate privacy can't help him see the fan coming. In the alternate version of the film, if you save him from the fan, he gets arrested for sexual harassment later. The franchise makes it crystal clear. This guy's core sin is predatory behavior, and death gives him exactly what he deserves. Frankie was a predator, but Carter was fueled by pure hate. Carter Daniels. Carter from the Final Destination isn't just unlikable, he's utterly vile. After the Speedway disaster, he blames George Lanter, a black security guard, for his wife's death. His grief doesn't lead to sadness or reflection. It leads to hate. His solution? Get drunk and drive to George's house to burn a cross on his lawn. This isn't implied or suggested. He's literally preparing to commit a racist hate crime. The death sequence is the franchise's peak of ironic justice. As Carter drunkenly prepares his cross-burning kit, Why Can't We Be Friends? Starts playing on his truck radio. radio. His truck starts rolling. The tow hook catches his pants. He's dragged down the street as the gasoline he brought for the cross spills everywhere. The friction ignites the gas. He's dragged down the road, on fire, screaming, until his truck crashes and explodes right as George steps out to see what's happening. The racist dies in flames from his own hatred, literally burned by the fuel for his hate crime. This is the most universally satisfying death in the franchise. Nobody feels bad for Carter. Nobody thinks it's too much. He was about to commit racial terrorism, and death turned his tools of hate into his funeral pyre. Carter ranks this high because his evil isn't personal but ideological. Carter's hatred was directed outward, but Peter's was personal betrayal. Peter Friedkin from Final Destination 5 has the most tragic fall from grace in the franchise. He starts as Sam's best friend, devastated by his girlfriend Candace's death. But when Bloodworth explains that killing someone can claim their remaining years, Peter doesn't resist the temptation. He embraces it. He transforms from grieving boyfriend to calculated killer. He shoots FBI agent Jim Block in cold blood. Then he goes after Molly, not because he has anything against her, but because she's a witness and he wants her lifespan. This isn't a moment of passion or desperation. It's planned. It's deliberate. He chooses to become a murderer to save himself. He breaks the cardinal rule of the franchise. He stops being a victim of death and starts doing death's work himself. His death comes from human hands, not Final Destination's elaborate traps. Sam grabs a meat spit from a rotisserie and impales Peter through the chest to save Molly. It's one of the only times in the franchise where a protagonist successfully fights back. Not against death, but against another human who chose to become a monster. Peter ranks this high because his sin is betrayal at every level. He betrays his friends, his humanity, and the unspoken bond between survivors. He had a choice between dying with dignity or living as a killer, and he chose murder. Peter killed to save himself, but our number one tried to kill family. Eric Campbell from Final Destination. Bloodlines commits the single most evil act in franchise history. After discovering he's adopted and therefore not on death's list, he's not relieved. He's not grateful. He hatches a plan that's pure evil. His younger brother Bobby is on death's list. Eric's solution? Intentionally trigger Bobby's fatal peanut allergy to kill him, then have him resuscitated to exploit the new life loophole. He's going to murder his baby brother to save him. This isn't desperation. This isn't survival instinct. Eric is completely safe. He's choosing to murder a child, his own brother, in some twisted attempt to cheat death's design. He's playing God with his sibling's life. The death scene happens in an MRI room where Eric plans to execute his scheme. The machine malfunctions, becoming a super magnet. It rips every piece of metal from his body, piercings tearing through flesh. Then the spring from a vending machine trap he'd set for Bobby gets pulled by the magnetic force and shoots across the room, impaling his skull. He dies from the very trap he set for his brother. Death doesn't just kill him, it uses his own weapon against him. The message is clear. You don't get to play God, especially with innocent lives. Eric is number one because he represents ultimate evil in this universe. Everyone else was trying to survive their own death. Eric was safe but chose to become a child killer. He wasn't on death's list until he tried to interfere with it. His death proves the ultimate rule. Death punishes not just those who cheat fate, but anyone who tries to control it. The Final Destination franchise is built on the idea that death has a design, and that design includes moral judgment. These 12 deaths prove that while everyone who cheats death eventually pays, some pay harder than others. The vain get burned by their vanity. The violent get crushed by their violence. The predators get their minds shredded. The racists burn in their own hatred. But the worst fate is reserved for those who try to play death's game themselves. Because in this universe, there's only one rule that matters. Death always wins, and it takes special pleasure in collecting those who had it coming. Kat Jennings. Kat is a sarcastic journalist in Final Destination 2 who survives the highway disaster but spends the rest of the film belittling the seriousness of the situation. She constantly mocks other survivors' fear and treats the supernatural threat like it's beneath her intelligence. Her snark and self-centeredness make her ignore every red flag and warning from people trying to help her. When a careless rescue worker accidentally triggers her SUV's airbag, Kat gets violently impaled by a PVC pipe that shoots through the passenger compartment. The pipe goes straight through her head, entering through her eye socket and exiting through the back of her skull. She's conscious for several seconds, aware that something is sticking out of her face before shock and brain damage shut her down. The journalist who thought she was smarter than everyone dies, realizing she was the biggest fool of all. But Kat's arrogance is nothing compared to what happens when you put yourself before others. Which brings us to someone who literally shoved people aside to save herself. Agent Jim Block. Block is an FBI agent in Final Destination 5 who investigates the bridge collapse survivors with aggressive suspicion and zero empathy. He treats innocent people like criminals, constantly accusing them of causing the disasters they're trying to survive. His arrogance makes him dismiss their supernatural warnings as lies or delusions. Block actively interferes with the survivors' attempts to help each other, viewing their cooperation as conspiracy rather than mutual aid. Block's intrusive investigation leads him directly into danger when he refuses to listen to survival warnings. During the bridge collapse sequence, he gets caught in falling debris while chasing after survivors he's supposed to be protecting. A massive steel beam crushes his legs, pinning him to the ground while the bridge continues collapsing around him. He's conscious and aware as more debris falls, slowly burying him alive. The agent who spent the entire film refusing to believe in supernatural danger dies trapped under the very disaster he thought was a hoax. Brian Gibbons. Brian seems like an innocent child in Final Destination 2, but his true nature shows through his reckless behavior and delight in dangerous stunts. He nearly causes several accidents through his cavalier attitude and complete disregard for safety warnings. Despite being young, Brian consistently ignores adults trying to keep him safe and actively seeks out risky situations for entertainment. Brian's recklessness finally kills him at a family barbecue when he tampers with the propane grill despite multiple warnings. The explosion from his own actions blows him apart instantly, but not before he realizes what he's done. The blast incinerates most of his body, while the shrapnel from the grill tears through what's left. The kid who thought danger was fun dies learning that explosions aren't games. Brian's age didn't save him from consequences, and neither did Todd's loyalty, because even the most innocent-seeming people can have it coming. Todd Wagner. Todd is Alex's loyal friend from the original film, shows no apparent character flaws, and dies first after surviving Flight 180. His death scene in the bathroom is designed to look like a suicide to authorities, establishing the series' reputation for cruel randomness. But here's the thing about Todd's actual death. It's a slow, terrifying strangulation where he's fully conscious the entire time. The shower curtain wraps around his neck while he's slipping on water, and he can't get leverage to free himself. Then, the toilet seat falls and tightens the noose even more. Todd experiences every second of suffocating while trapped in his own bathroom, dying in the most humiliating way possible. It's designed to be the worst possible death for someone who just wanted a normal shower. But if Todd was truly innocent, wait until you see what happens to actual teenagers. Speaking of teenagers who maybe had it coming, Tim Carpenter. Tim is a brash teenager who consistently mocks Kimberly's visions and laughs at the idea that death has a design throughout Final Destination 2. He's not just skeptical, he's actively contemptuous of anyone who shows fear or caution. His energetic personality makes him dismiss every warning sign, treating the supernatural threat like it's a joke only stupid people believe in. When that massive glass pane falls on Tim outside the dentist office, it doesn't kill him instantly. The glass cuts through his torso, but he's still conscious, looking down at his own body being sliced in half. He finally realizes all those warnings were real, but only gets a few seconds of absolute terror before bleeding out. The kid who thought he knew everything dies, knowing he was completely wrong about everything that mattered. Tim's arrogance killed him, but his mother's death reveals something even darker, because Nora Carpenter's fate shows how death punishes the most human reactions. Nora Carpenter. Nora is dealing with legitimate trauma, and she lost her husband and is raising Tim alone while struggling with overwhelming anxiety. When she gets trapped in that elevator, her panic attack is completely understandable. Her hair gets caught on a hook during the attack, but she's too terrified to think clearly about how to free herself. The elevator lurches and Nora's hair pulls tight against the hook, snapping her neck instantly. But the worst part is the split second before it happens. You can see in her eyes that she knows exactly what's about to occur. She dies with that horrible realization that her own fear just killed her. A mother trying to cope with grief gets decapitated because she had a panic attack in the wrong place. If death punishes grief and fear, imagine what it does to ambition. Which brings us to a gymnast whose perfectionism became her death sentence. Candace Hooper. Candace is completely focused on sticking her landing and perfecting her routine during practice in Final Destination 5. She's so locked into her performance that she doesn't notice the safety equipment malfunctioning around her. Her tunnel vision on achieving excellence blinds her to environmental dangers that would be obvious to someone paying attention to their surroundings. During her routine, Candace's perfectionist focus causes her to land wrong when equipment fails. She completely snaps in half on impact, but would still likely be alive for a short time, giving her one of the most slow and agonizing deaths. Candace's ambition killed her, but at least she cared about something. Unlike Perry, whose complete indifference led to the most random death in the series. Perry Malinowski. Perry couldn't care less about Wendy's warnings throughout Final Destination 3. She dismisses every supernatural sign and shows zero interest in the idea that she might be in danger. Her indifference isn't brave skepticism, it's complete emotional detachment from the reality around her. She treats the mounting evidence like background noise. During the festival scene, Perry is is standing in the exact wrong spot when a flagpole breaks loose. The pole spears straight through her chest, lifting her off the ground before slamming her into the ground. She gets a few seconds to look down at the metal rod sticking out of her body before shock sets in. Perry dies, realizing that all those warnings she ignored were desperately trying to save her life. Perry's apathy was deadly, but sometimes caring too much about control is even worse. Just ask Erin, whose independence became her downfall. Erin Ulmer. Erin works at a hardware store and refuses to let paranoia control her life throughout Final Destination 3. Her practical nature makes her trust her own judgment over supernatural warnings. She insists on normalcy and control, refusing to acknowledge that supernatural elements are affecting her environment. When offered help or warnings, she brushes them off as paranoid nonsense. Erin's independence leads her to work alone with malfunctioning equipment. The nail gun starts firing randomly due to supernatural interference, but she keeps trying to fix it herself instead of getting help. Multiple nails fire into her skull and torso before she can react. She dies slowly from the numerous nail in her brain, but not before experiencing the terror of realizing she should have listened to the warnings. Erin's independence killed her, but what about someone who just wanted to forget? Valerie's attempt to erase her trauma led to the most over-the-top death sequence in the original film. Valerie Luton. Valerie is a Flight 180 survivor who tries to erase every memory of that night. She destroys all mementos from the trip and avoids other survivors completely. Her coping mechanism involves isolating herself and suppressing the trauma through avoidance. She refuses to engage with what happened, thinking she can control her healing by controlling her memories. Valerie's isolation triggers an elaborate kitchen death sequence. Water leaks create electrical problems, which cause appliances to malfunction in a cascade of accidents. She gets impaled by a kitchen knife that flies from an exploding blender, then burns alive when the house catches fire from electrical shorts. The woman who tried to forget Flight 180 dies in a domestic disaster that's even more elaborate than the original plane crash. All these deaths seem unfair, but finally we get to someone who actually chose to be evil. Nathan Sears proves that sometimes death really does give people what they deserve. Nathan Sears. Nathan is a factory worker in Final Destination 5 who decides someone else should die so he can live. After researching death's rules, he makes the conscious decision to murder an innocent person to transfer his curse. His paranoia leads him to calculated evil rather than just poor judgment. He values his own life over an innocent person's life and acts on that belief. Nathan orchestrates another person's death and thinks he's beaten the system, but death responds immediately with falling debris from a completely unrelated construction accident. The massive concrete block crushes Nathan instantly, right after he thinks he's safe. He gets maybe 30 seconds of relief before cosmic justice delivers the most satisfying death in the franchise. Nathan got what he deserved, and so did Julia Campbell, because cutting safety corners isn't just stupid, it's criminal. Julia Campbell. Julia is an opportunist in Final Destination, Bloodlines who cuts safety protocols to save time and cover her tracks following a disaster. She deliberately creates dangerous situations for coworkers and the public to benefit herself. Her corner cutting isn't just laziness, it's willful endangerment of innocent people for personal gain. Julia's disregard for safety leads her straight into a garbage truck compactor. The crushing mechanism activates while she's inside, and she experiences every second of being slowly compressed. The machine doesn't kill her quickly. She's aware of her bones breaking and organs rupturing as the walls close in. Julia dies knowing that her selfish shortcuts led directly to the most claustrophobic death imaginable. Julia deserved it, but the next two took manipulation to a whole new level. Sam and Molly's story reveals the franchise's ultimate punishment for denial. Sam Lawton and Molly Harper. Sam and Molly are the leads from Final Destination 5 who refuse to accept supernatural warnings despite overwhelming evidence. They consistently dismiss visions and supernatural signs throughout their entire film. Their stubborn insistence on normalcy becomes active resistance to survival. They don't just ignore warnings, they fight against them. The ultimate irony is that Sam and Molly's denial leads them directly onto Flight 180 from the original film. They board the doomed plane thinking they've escaped their fate, only to become part of the franchise's original disaster. They die in the plane explosion that started the entire series, making their prequel story a closed loop of cosmic justice. Sam and Molly's denial doomed them, but manipulation and betrayal earn even worse fates. Which brings us to Stephanie and Charlie, whose log truck callback delivers perfect justice. Stephanie and Charlie Reyes. Stephanie and Charlie use manipulation and betrayal to survive in Final Destination. Bloodlines. Their strategy involves deliberately harming other survivors for personal benefit. They exploit other people's fear and trust to evade death's reach. Their survival comes at a moral cost that crosses them into villain territory. Death delivers perfect ironic justice by killing them with a log-filled train, a direct callback to the franchise's most iconic near-death experience. The logs crush them instantly in exactly the same way that terrorized audiences in Final Destination 2. Stephanie and Charlie die by the franchise's most famous imagery, making their betrayal earn the most recognizable death sequence. Everyone we've covered actually died, but there's one person who truly deserves it and never gets it. William Bloodworth has guided every group to their doom and never faced consequences. William Bloodworth. Bloodworth is the mortician who appears across multiple Final Destination films, providing cryptic guidance that leads to deaths rather than prevention. He profits from funeral services while withholding life-saving information. His knowledge of death's design, combined with his refusal to genuinely help, makes him complicit in every tragedy. He guides groups toward doom while benefiting financially from their deaths. Bloodworth represents the ultimate cosmic injustice. He's the one character who truly understands death's rules, but uses that knowledge for profit instead of helping victims. He's collaborated with death across multiple films, enabling tragedies while remaining completely untouchable. The franchise's most evil character never faces any consequences for his actions. Bloodworth remains untouchable while everyone else pays the price. If you want to see the most brutal deaths in Stranger Things, click the video on the screen.